What's up, Zelda fans? In this video, we're going to give you our top 5 worst Zelda bosses.
We constantly talk about all the great things in Zelda, but it's not a perfect franchise, and it's time to rip these terrible bosses. Let's go!
A while ago, we did our top 8 worst Zelda dungeons ranking, and it turned out to be one of our most popular videos to date. And on top of that, we just had a ton of fun doing it.
So we decided why not do our top worst Zelda bosses. Now it did take us a little bit longer than we expected, not really sure why. I guess we just got caught up in other videos, but it's finally here.
Now, some of these bosses were difficult, some were annoying, some just didn't fit the dungeon that they were in, and some of them were just frankly underwhelming.
Now what we did behind the scenes is we took our top 12 worst Zelda bosses and then we applied a point system to get to this top 5, and the reason we did 12 was because we could only actually list that many.
Yeah, I know, it was surprising. There were not that many horrible bosses in the Zelda franchise. I was surprised. But...
And what was surprising is that we both actually had 12.
I know. Now, please keep in mind that this ranking is just our opinion. You're more than welcome to leave your own personal ranking in the comments.
And be sure to stick around to our individual rankings. We'll actually give you our top 12, not our top 10 like we usually do. We'll give you the whole listing of what we had.
And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that little bell icon so that you get a notification every time we drop a new video. And also be sure to like this video.
Click that thumbs up down there in the video. That's where it's at.
There you go.
Then also be sure to support us on Patreon. Join our Discord server where we're talking Zelda constantly, along with some other things here and there.
This is our top 5 worst Zelda bosses.
No part of any final boss in a Zelda game should be this silly. I mean, we got this dude right here. He has absolutely no muscles. Look at those limbs. His head is not proportional at all to his body. We get some weird music, and he just dances around. He's not intimidating whatsoever.
He really isn't, and Majora's Mask has been one of the darker entries in the Zelda franchise, and the mask itself has been portrayed as like this ultimate embodiment of evil. So to get that weird second phase where it's just, it feels so goofy that it's out of touch, I think, with the entire rest of the theme of Majora's Mask.
And its sound effects. I just didn't really care for its sound effects or its voice.
Neither.
It had like that screeching, really high pitch. Just not, for final boss, kind of reminded me of Zelda a little bit. Just, you know, not as strong as I thought the character would be.
Yeah.
And then, but you know what? I did like the moonwalk, and I did like his orb attacks.
One thing that really did frustrate me fighting him also was like when he is running around the arena, it can be really hard to get a hit in on him and actually like slow him down. So for me, along with the silliness, there was also a little bit of frustration fighting him. In my opinion, this fight was one of the biggest letdowns in the entire history of the Zelda franchise. I mean, we finally get to the end of this epic game, Breath of the Wild. We're fighting Ganon in his final form, and this is the horrible fight that we get.
In your opinion? No, in our opinion. This is one of the biggest letdowns. This is like getting the prom queen, taking her home, and then all you do is hold hands with her at the end of the night. That's how big of a letdown Dark Beast Ganon is, but just, it was a huge boss. It looked awesome, but he really had no attacks.
Well, that's the problem. It really posed no threat to you as long as you just kept moving, and there should never be a final boss that not only are you able to beat it basically on your first try, but without hardly even taking any damage. I'm not sure if in my playthrough I got hit more than twice, and I think both times it was when I was still trying to get on the stupid horse to even start the fight.
I mean, it was really easy, and when he did attack, like, it was kind of weird. Like, he would attack, like, you would see it coming, and it was so easy to dodge. Now, I guess Zelda was kind of holding him back a little bit, so it makes sense there, but just, I don't know, he just needed more attacks.
And I almost never rode on horses the entire game, so to get to this final boss fight and it be on a horseback, I actually struggled with it a little bit just because I hadn't done it the entire game.
And those targets, they were so easy to hit, and then the music playing during this final boss, some of it, not all of it, was kind of that Breath of the Wild theme that kind of had a happier tone. It just really didn't fit. Mothula from Link to the Past. In my opinion, it's one of the hardest boss fights in the Zelda franchise.
Absolutely.
There's just so much going on.
There really is, and I actually appreciated the design of Mothula. It kind of really stood out from other Link to the Past bosses, and I thought it was a cool throwback to the original Legend of Zelda, but every time I get to the end of Skullwoods, I absolutely dread fighting it just because of how difficult of a fight it really is.
I don't appreciate it at all, so I'm glad you have some appreciation for it. But you got the moving floor going in different directions. The spikes come at you from all angles, and then Mathula is shooting out rings of fire. There's just so much to dodge, and honestly, that moving floor, if it stayed still, this would be a lot easier fight.
Yes, it would. And honestly, it's just like, especially if you run out of magic for your fire rod, you've got to get in close and use your sword to attack it. And that's so hard to do with all the obstacles. And like you mentioned, the moving floor, it just makes it difficult to land your sword attacks on him.
Every time I've fought him, I've had to use at least one fairy, or I think it can use magic or the cane of Burna. You have to use something with this guy or you're going to die.
All of the fights with the Imprisoned are pretty terrible in my opinion, but the first phase is the absolute worst. And I just think the Imprisoned looks so dumb. It basically looks like a giant sock puppet covered in spikes.
And slicing his toes with a sword, it's just not really a concept that I care for, and there's no way his toes are that soft. He's not going and get a pedicure every single week. You know, that ain't happening.
No, it really isn't. And plus just the whole idea of attacking its toes when it's a boss that is this huge and supposed to be intimidating, to me it was just kind of a dumb strategy all in all.
And then you attack his toes, and then he falls all the way backwards. Like, really, the physics of that do not make any sense to me whatsoever. And then you hit this little metal peg on the top of his head, and somehow this hurts him tremendously. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, on top of all that, it's this giant boss, and it has almost no attacks whatsoever. It spends the entire fight just trying to get out of the sealed grounds while you're hacking away at it, and it does nothing to defend itself.
And it's really just slow moving. It's not intimidating whatsoever. Just a terrible boss fight. The worst boss, the most annoying boss, the biggest jerk of a boss, Moldorm from Link to the Past, takes all those crowns. It wasn't necessarily a tough fight, but just having to restart it most of the time over and over just became so annoying.
And I don't even think saying it's annoying really does it justice. To me, this was one of the most annoying boss fights in the entire franchise, and even though, like you said, it wasn't difficult, it just, that is what really catapults it to the top or bottom, however way you want to look at it, of our boss ranking.
I mean, the platform is so small, and then you have that hole in the middle. I absolutely hate that hole in the middle. That's just so mean. That's just being mean by Nintendo. And then when he hits you, he knocks you back really far, making this boss fight even more tough.
And it's so hard to hit like the end of the very tip of its tail when it starts moving around faster and faster as the fight progresses. And it just makes you even more mad when you're like, oh, I'm so close to finishing him off. He's moving really fast. And then pow, he knocks you right off the edge and you got to start all over again.
And here you'll see our individual rankings, and you'll see that I have some bosses from Oracle of Ages and Adventure of Link, just two Zelda games that I really do not care for.
Now, I haven't played Adventure of Link, so that kind of screwed you over on the boss you had at number 1. And honestly, I swear I've played Oracle of Ages, but I do not remember hardly anything of it, so clearly the bosses didn't stand out either.
That's why I hate Thunderbird so much, because I can never beat him because he was so difficult. I've actually never beaten Zelda 2 because of that boss, so my hatred is really high for him.
I was a little surprised to see that half of the bosses that you listed, or almost half of the bosses that you listed, were actually from handheld games. That surprised me a little bit. I guess
I hate Oracle of Ages, man.
And I was also surprised to see that we actually had 7 of the same bosses in our top 12. When you think about how many bosses there have been in the Zelda franchise, having that much overlap surprised me.
That's how you know these bosses are terrible, because we had so many in the top 12. Now, one thing I always like seeing is when we have a boss in the exact same spot. Kind of makes it like, you know that our thinking is kind of on the same point. We have Moldorm and Mathula both in the same spot from Link to the Past.
This has been our top 5 worst Zelda bosses.